Welcome to Higher Ed Athletics. Today I'm joined by the athletic director at IU Indianapolis, Luke Bosso. Luke, thanks for being on Higher Ed Athletics.
Thanks for having me, Travis. Looking forward to it.
Well, first I thought this is coming out the official day of IU Indianapolis, and anyone that's in the Indy area, which most of my listeners and viewers are not, might not be aware that there's this huge change going on, and it becomes official July 1. So for kind of background, a lot of people know that I've worked at IU most of my career, but I had the fortune of being on the task force, the athletics task force, to kind of support that group when I was working in the president's office at IU during the initial planning stage of this. So I've gotten the chance to kind of see behind the scenes of this whole thing from the beginning. But kind of just curious, what has really been the, I guess, behind the scenes for the last year? You've been in the role, I think, just over a year.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is kind of behind the scenes? What has the athletic department had to have been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think for those who don't know, is IUPUI, now IU Indianapolis, and which I explained to a lot of people, it was more of a non-compete than ever a marriage, right? Which I think helps set the foundation for what this is. I mean, from an athletic standpoint, when I got here, we had about 40-some student athletes who were on the Purdue track. Now it's down in the low 20s, and we had to work with the NCAA and get a waiver for each of those student athletes if they want to continue on the Purdue side as engineering or some of the other things they had going. That was really the heaviest lift for us.
You had to walk out the door, and
yeah.
So for those that don't know, I guess the profile of IU Indianapolis or IUPUI, it sits on the White River, literally right next to the NCAA. They share a parking garage right out front. So you had to walk across the street, a couple meetings.
Knock on the door. Laura Hugh, our head of compliance, did that a lot, and Margie Smith-Simmons in the chancellor's office spearheaded that. So that was a really worrisome lift because you wanted to make sure these student athletes had a way to finish their careers, and we were able to get 1-year waivers for that. So it was great. I mean, the other big lift, and you don't think about this till you take a role like it, changing the logos and really getting the logos in the right spot. There's things that you've done for a long time that you change a logo and you don't think about what that change means until you see it on gear, or in this case, we were essentially operating as IU Indianapolis after basketball season.
Mm-hmm.
Still a couple teams still competing as IUPUI, but you've seen your coaches out recruiting, and people, you have Jaguars, you have Indianapolis, so we had to play with that a little bit to add IU Indy or add IU to it. And we're finally in a good spot. Still some hiccups along the way. If I never have to look at another logo or approve one, I'll be happy. But one of those things you're doing when you're recreating something.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago out here at the track, I went to undergrad here, so I'll kind of profile the institution a little bit too. But they've got a legendary stadium out there, and for the track and field community, and the Indy 11, the soccer team, plays there right now too, Michael Carroll Stadium. But on the back end of the video board, it's always been kind of the Natator, or I think the logo of the stadium. But then you get that IUPUI old school logo, and they finally put a new fresh logo over it, and IU Indianapolis. And so I went to undergrad here 2007, 2012, took an extra year because a lot of people here, and it's still like this, a lot of people work. It does make it probably a little harder. It's not your traditional everyone lives on campus setting, so which obviously brings challenges for what you're going to be dealing with basketball and some other sports. But it's just really good now that it's kind of become the core school. There's no more Purdue in the mix of things as far as the campus. Now, Purdue does have a little bit of campus here too. They're doing an extension of their West Lafayette campus here. But I'm just really happy as an alum to see it kind of look like IU, and so I'm excited about that. It's a big school. Right here in the heart of Indianapolis, and I think the challenge is trying to get away from that commuter style. But with the White River Parkway, White River State Park, I think it's really we're gonna have some news too about an on-campus arena. But I think that the future is bright for this change. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I think for the I always tell people I took this job because I'm from here. I want to see Indianapolis. I want to see the campus continue to grow, and I think with the developments we have coming around campus with Alenco and extension of White River State Park, and then our new athletic center we'll talk about later. I think we're really poised to be a premier. President Whitten stated we want to be a premier research institution, and I think one of the things of doing that is giving kids a traditional college experience. And every day with our new chancellor and the president, I think we're moving more and more towards that.
Yeah, and you look at the places that the chancellor's been. It's been Missouri, but in Columbia, the city of Columbia. But also, I look at being the dean of business at Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball huge there, and President Whitten, a huge sports fan. And I will say every urban research university that's great usually has a really strong athletic program. And so I know from the task force, there was coaches concerned about how other coaches were recruiting against them by saying, oh, they might be going D2, things like that. I don't believe that was ever a consideration. You're not going to go backwards when you're trying to make a great urban research university. If anything, obviously IU's shown the investment and the faith that they're putting in you. So I'm excited about the future.
Me too. And I've stolen this quote from Josh Ertz, and I would continue to. He said that, people go to institutions because of their academics, but they know about institutions because of their athletics. And, athletics is it's a huge marketing, huge branding component for any university. And that's why we're here to win. And
you got that from Coach Schertz?
Yeah. He said it during the season, towards the end of the season.
So it wasn't at St. Louis.
No, it was still in Indiana State. So, so I was able to take that from him. So, I credit him every time. So just so he knows if he watches. So.
Oh, he might watch. He follows me on Twitter. We're good pals. I got to work with him for a year and really happy about that. He had some of the, we obviously when I was in Indiana State, you were at the game basketball. I honestly see if you can get basketball turned around with Coach Casaro, I mean, that could be what Indiana State had this past year. So your previous experiences, you would be, I think, the definition of a non-traditional hire as far as D1 athletic directors. But it reminds me more of Fred Glass than anything else. And, Fred's been on the podcast a couple times. He used to be my boss at IU. But, he was the AD for either right under or just over 10 years. And he was known for really rebuilding the infrastructure of IU athletics, huge renovations he'd done at Memorial Stadium and then Assembly Hall, Simon Scott Assembly Hall, things like that. But, what type of, you can get into your background too, but it's mostly in government here in Indianapolis. So what type of skills and experiences in those previous roles do you think transferred over for the situational element of IU Indianapolis and the future of athletics here?
Yeah. And, I tell people a lot, my path is untraditional for 49 other states, probably traditional for Indiana. You look at Fred and Jack Swarbrick and then Mark Miles and Bulls out at Speedway, similar backgrounds of mine. And, those you don't know, I spent the last 5 years previous working in state government. I worked for the governor of Indiana as a top advisor, and then worked at the state's economic development agency and was afforded a lot of opportunities very young. And, I think the first thing I learned from working for a governor that's transitioned here is you never really get comfortable until about a year into the job, maybe a year and a half. When I came into this, I wanted the sprint from day one, right? I could see some of the problems, see some of the issues, know what we had to do in the community, but really had to pace myself and say, okay, well, things aren't solved in a day. Working in the roles I had in government, even in my private sector roles, it puts a lot of reality about what you're dealing with. Luckily in sports, you do deal with some really intense issues, but it's not life or death. It should be fun.
Yeah.
So reminding everybody in the department it's fun, and really reminding myself that I loved working for Governor Holcomb. It was a dream job in a lot of ways, and this has become that way. For us, I think what IU Indianapolis needed, when Fred took the job in Bloomington, and Fred's been great to chat with. We see him at around the neighborhood. They needed somebody like Fred. They needed an attorney who was going to come in and look at these projects, help with compliance, those sort of things. I think for us, maybe non-traditional from the sports standpoint, but we need to be integrated in the community. We need to be out and about doing things. And when President Whitten, when we were talking, she goes, hey, there's three things we really need you to do. We need you to raise money, and we've raised more money this year than we've ever had. Bring on sponsors, and we've had more sponsors than we've had in a long time. And then she goes, win at basketball, right? And those are kind of the three things that we're focused on every day. We want to win in everything, and we have been winning in a lot of stuff. We just haven't won in basketball. And identifying Paul and that CEO approach has been really good for us.
Yeah, and she goes to those games.
She does. It is. It's amazing. We have a Big Ten president at our games. And I think the thing, that's so great about her is she follows it, right?
Yeah.
We had a great soccer season, as you know, and she would send me a text after wins, is like, hey, glad they won 5 in a row, or look who scored a goal. And then the same in basketball, she would, she ask about players and knows what's going on. And it's been nice having somebody that's been so supportive of the athletic department.
Yeah, she's a huge sports fan, but she's also a very intelligent sports fan, is what I tell people.
Exactly.
And so, and now you'll have a president and a chancellor there. So no pressure at all in year one for Coach Casaro.
Yeah.
So what would your advice? Obviously, this could be, I think mostly non-traditional has to be location specific, in my opinion. Like there's got to be a reason. People know you. I think I saw a quote from you somewhere that like, when you go talk to someone, it's not an introduction because you've already met them most likely, and that you know a lot of the people in the community. But so thinking about maybe people that are potential non-traditional hires inside their region, I guess we could say, what kind of advice would you have if they maybe want to be an athletic director or anything really, but they don't see it right now, and how they might be able to work their way closer and closer to that if it were to ever open for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's become clear to me in this role is you kind of have to know a lot about a lot of different things. And it used to be a little about a lot of things. I got to know a lot. I was really involved. I still am really involved in the community. So, I was the chair of the men's and women's basketball tournament for the Horizon League. I had been involved with a lot of other organizations that were sport adjacent. I'm on the zoo board. I'm on our state chamber board. And we have, I think, knowing my strengths, I've said this before too, Travis, my path's been my path. I don't know how many people it would work for. I was lucky enough to have some high level roles in state government. I was lucky enough that when I was at Cat Sepper and Miller, they trusted me to form a practice. But I always want to be involved in something. And if with the commissioner called me, if I didn't take being the chair of the LOC, I would never have this job. And I think being involved and knowing folks and knowing what's going on, I kind of have a joke. There's 2 things I look for when I'm hiring people. I don't want to hire anybody who's a jerk, and I don't want to hire anybody who can just talk about sports. And in today's in college athletics, like, little did I know when I left government that I'd still be dealing with government.
For pretty much your whole first year.
Yeah, when it deals with Congress on deciding certain things, and if I know one of our sponsors has done something well, and I read it in the IBJ, I read it in the Indy Star, when we go meet with them, I may know the person already, but it also shows that we care about them, we know about it, we want to partner. So being involved, and I do think that as athletics, as it continues to change into whatever it's going to change into, you're probably going to have more non-traditional hires, that are probably regionally based, but because you're dealing with so much. I mean, think about here, we're dealing with the business community, dealing with the government community, dealing with the student athletes, and you have to be prepared to really kind of deal with whatever's in front of you that day.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about your first year, but maybe break down even more what that learning curve was like. And then how did you also come in with that learning curve, knowing how you said you came in wanting to run and you saw some things that needed fixed? I mean, how did you come in and evaluate quickly what needed to happen, knowing that there's really 2 things: arena and having to deal with that, and then also the IU Indianapolis. With all that, you still need to run a day-to-day athletic department. So learning curve, and then maybe how did you come in and evaluate what you need to do?
Yeah, it's lucky in the sense that in this role, being the leader of the department, I get to set the dynamic plan, right? We're going to steer the ship a certain way. And it's easy to tell right off the bat, like who wants to do that, who wants to go that way. And, for me, I've been able to rely internally on Ed Holdaway and Laura Hugh, both our deputy ADs. Laura was promoted into that role when, early I saw her aggressiveness in getting things done and willing to roll up her sleeves and do things. And of course, Ed's been here for a long time. Yeah. And really, he's the guy sometimes that's like, hey, we're going a little fast. And it's good for me to recognize that because, whenever you start any business, there's busy times, there's slow times. When I got here, June of last year, going into the summer, that's traditionally a slow time.
Yeah.
People take off, right? I hadn't experienced the the seasons where you're here all the time. And there were 100 things I wanted to get done. And, we sat down and said, okay, well, how fast can I go right now? When does the season start? And we just started having a checklist of things. I mean, this is a simple thing. We didn't have universal email signatures when I got here. I'm like, okay, that's easy. Check that off the list. Let's get that done. We didn't have full staff meetings. And for me, like, the best way for everyone to get to know me is like if we're around each other, once every 2 weeks. And I spent an enormous amount of time on the coach's side. And part of it, you have to listen, right? When you get a new person, everybody's going to come tell you their ideas. And we would pick ideas and say, okay, that one's a good one. Let's move this one here, and it's still there, and really knock those down that way. And you may have a question about this, but I also relied a lot on people around the community and say like, hey, what are we missing from an IU Indy standpoint? And they would tell me, and there's look, if I had $1 billion, there's a billion more things we would do. Yeah. But we really focus on, okay, how do we get involved in the community? How do we make sure our compliance and academics are still strong? Because I tell people all the time, if we weren't strong at compliance and academics, I wouldn't be here, right? And we're had a 3.4 GPA. Our compliance is great. Keep those strong. And then how do we build internal relationships? When I first got here, I would only meet with coaches in their office. It's a partnership. I often joke, I'm great to work with. I'm not fun to work for, right? Because if you're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, we're working as a team, we're being great partners. If you're not, then I'm going to be in your business making sure we get it done. So it's just a combination of a lot of different things. And I would tell you, and this may sound crazy, and it wouldn't be the first time I said that. We don't have everything fixed yet, and we probably won't have everything fixed during my entire tenure. It's making sure we fix the big things and give our coaches, our athletes, and students here a legitimate Division I experience. If I can get to that point, I'll feel pretty good about what we have left. Well, let's shift to we will go to basketball because that is one of the three that the president's giving you to win. So IU just announced IU Indianapolis is getting a new athletics center here on campus. There's been rumblings about this for a while. It's already been approved in state legislature, I think last year during the year, but this was finally Board of Trustees approval. I've seen them working on the ground out there, my walk over here. So for those that aren't aware, it's basically right in front of the NCAA national office, sandwiched in between the library and the art school, and then here in the athletic department. So you kind of maybe give an overview of what that facility will look like, who will be in it, and then maybe some interesting things that you've had to deal with to get it kind of approved. Yeah, it's exciting times for us. I think it's a big thing we're missing on campus. There's still a little bit of work to be done. Still has to go back to Commission of Higher Ed and then the State Budget Agency. So not 100% all there, but close. The General Assembly did pass it in the 2022 budget. Along with some other stuff for the campus, which is really exciting. But one of the things they told us is we had to find an outside partner to be in the facility with us. We knew all along that if we built this athletic center, it's not just going to be for IU Indianapolis. We're going to hope to attract other amateur sporting events. But we're excited that USA Track and Field has decided to come in and join our office space, which is a huge win for us. Obviously one of the most popular NGBs in the Olympic sphere and the organizing sphere, however you want to say it, and great corporate citizens for them. So they're going to share the space, but 4,500 seats for basketball and volleyball. Our men's and women's basketball team and volleyball of this year. Hopefully late summer, fall, depending on, it seems to get hotter later, right? So we still consider it summer. And then ready to go for the fall of 26 season, women volleyball season, fall of 26. So, it's going to quick, but it's about on par with what other arenas we're seeing or other athletic centers we're seeing. I think for us, some of the big things too, it gives us a place to host all of our athletes. We have a small auditorium where we probably fit 2 waves. Now we'll be able to fit everyone in there. Have all our offices in the same spot, kind of the same area. We're obviously in temporary space now. That just provides some conflicts, or not conflicts, provides some issues because it's not open. It's not really set up to be an athletic office. You're doing a lot of turns, twists and turns as you come in here. That would be nice, having other facilities in the building, locker rooms, different things like that will just help us put us on par with everybody else at the Division I level. And I think from the point from, difficulties or things I saw along the way, obviously Tom Morrison has been great in shepherding that process. I think my side is he's really dealt with kind of the nuts and bolts and the legislature and all that different side. My side's been meeting with him and meeting with potential users of the building. I think it was important for me that we, we're I don't know how we'll define primary user, but just so people know that, hey, we do play a lot of basketball games. We do play volleyball. We're also going to have a practice facility in there. Mm-hmm. Those are just game changers for us. And it's exciting. And look, I think, what we've built on this campus with Michael A. Carroll Stadium hosting Olympic trials till '88, the NAT, hosting trials.
One of the best swimming pools in the country,
in the
world,
yeah. In the world, and and you could swim there tomorrow. You could go swim, and that will be the model. And then we hope to host additional sporting events in the venue, and I think it's going to be a great way to attract people to campus. It's going to be I was already talking with Chancellor Ramchan about, like, we have these events, at the NAT or Carroll Stadium. How do we tell people about IU Indianapolis when we're doing that? And you talk about Indiana State, and if you went to and I'm sure you did, the NIT, right? You go to those final games. Not everybody in that building were Indiana State grads, right?
No,
but Indianapolis loves winners, and for us, the public university, we want to position ourselves to attract people because we're winning. And we're gonna win this year in the jungle. I want to be very clear on the men's and women's side. But we're also going to win in that new athletic center. And when we do, we're going to consistently draw people, because people are going to say, you know what, I can come down on a Saturday afternoon or Thursday night. I can park really close. I can walk into this beautiful facility and I can see the Jaguars play basketball or volleyball. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to build on that. And it's going to be really exciting for us.
Yeah. And then thinking about the city of Indianapolis too, one big pitch was, it's another different size venue that the city doesn't have. So they've got Gainbridge Fieldhouse. They've got Lucas Oil Stadium. They've got a great baseball minor league field. And, we're going to figure out, we're going to have a soccer stadium. We're going to have 2 soccer stadiums for anyone local. There's a, kind of a heated back and forth of that. Being part of the new proposed soccer stadium for Indy 11 was to be right near here. And I thought there was going to be like a 4,000 seat auditorium or something setting as part of it, part of the build. But if that doesn't happen, now you couldn't host certain events over there, but now you've got also the city of Indianapolis can bring in more things that fits maybe that size, which would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, look, I mean, what we have coming in the future from Final Fours and other sporting events and WrestleManias and all these different things, from an amateur sports prospect, we're giving more inventory to the sports corp to go out and say, hey, we can host these other events, right? Because we're going to host. Obviously, we're going to host events from October until March, and you will utilize our practice different things. But if the sports corp has another venue at their fingertips to go out and get additional amateur championships, or whether it's other NCAA events and those different things. I mean, this is a community asset. I wake up every day, Travis, and I'm like, how do we make IU Indianapolis better? How do we make the city of Indianapolis better? And this is another way to do it. And we're going to have 3 world-class venues within, a good driver, away. And it's exciting. And, think about, this week with the swim, or last week with the swimming trials, we probably could have utilized an athletic center offsite, right? Give those swimmers something to go do. Or think about, the NCAA tournament, and we have Sweet 16s and Elite Eights and Final Fours coming up. I think there's going to be a lot of use for that athletic center off the campus, and I think it's going to be another arrow in our pack to help continue to draw great events here.
Now let's get into men's basketball. So you hired a new coach, but you went through one season and you had that chance to kind of evaluate things. So maybe explain your process for evaluating the men's basketball program in the first year, and then we'll get into the hire of Coach Corsaro.
Yeah. I mean, I think. And people have heard this story before, and being from here, my dad and I would go to the Horizon League tournament, and right at tip off, for the championship game, kind of on cue, my dad would be like, I don't understand why IU Indianapolis isn't here. and my dad has a long history of being involved with high school basketball in Indiana. And he, it was kind of saying, if you just recruit Indiana, you're going to win, right? And if only it were that simple. But then you hear guys on the radio kind of say the same thing, and I think I was really taken aback when you look at the previous rosters, how few guys were from Indiana, and then not just Indiana, like you draw a circle 5 hours.
There's like Texas and states really far away.
Yeah, guys all around, and it's one thing to be bad and nobody wants to see you. I guess it's one thing to be bad and people want to see it, right? It's another thing to be bad and nobody wants to see it. And I think we were kind of that threshold. I often said, if you're in Fishers or you're in Columbus or Lafayette or somewhere, and you say, okay, I follow Travis his entire career. I'm going to be in Indy next week. Maybe I'm going to come see an IU Indy game, and maybe I look at the record, but I'm like, I know Travis, so I'm going to come see him. Well, you start looking at our rosters, and you're like, well, gosh, I don't know any of these people. They're 3-15. Do I want to come see them? And the answer is no, right? And I think we had some of those barriers, and I wasn't here before last year, right? So I can't say what the support was or wasn't prior to me getting here. But I made a very clear priority. Priority number one is winning, and if winning is the number one expectation, the minimum expectation is competing, and competing just takes effort. And as we came through the basketball season, I think it was time for a new voice. And let me say, Matt Crenshaw is an A+ person. It was probably one of the harder things I've had to do in my adult life. And unfortunately, it's not the first time I've had to let people go, and it's tough. Matt, Hall of Fame member here, all-time assist leader. But sometimes when you're evaluating people or different things, you recognize a new voice is needed.
Mm-hmm.
And we came to that conclusion. And, I think if you look at our record over the last 3 years and look at different things, I don't think there are many people who could argue that we needed a change. And whether or not Matt was given a fair chance before I got here, I don't know. But I think over the last year, we tried to do everything to help the men's basketball program. And, look, we have built-in barriers, right? We don't have an arena. We played our games, 15 minutes away. There were some other things, investment that we needed to be made. And, if we would make the decision to do that, we wanted to make sure we were heading down the right path.
Yeah, and it's always a difficult situation because I was here when George Hill was here, longtime NBA player, and he was great. We were really good back then, but we were in the jungle and it was rocking. I think, moving to so for those that aren't aware, like the state fair has a Coliseum, they call it, a nice basketball venue, really good basketball venue. But when you're in the city of Indianapolis and you're trying to get there during rush hour, it might take you 15, 20 minutes to get there. Plus, the whole area has been under construction for several years, I feel like. There's not a lot of food places in there, so it's really hard to recruit students out there. You also might have been able to evaluate other coaches too, because they do say every athletic director has a list just in case. And, you didn't come from like the deputy athletic world. You just came in and it's like, hey, win in basketball. And so that season probably felt like it was slow, but then it probably felt like it was like, oh, we're getting closer and closer.
Yeah. Longest, longest, 4 months of my life felt like, and look, it was just as hard as on the coaches. I think they thought they were going to be better, and things just didn't go their way. And yeah, I mean, look, winning at basketball is really important. Winning at everything is what I'm here to do. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Being from here, I think the pressure of being an AD from your hometown is probably different, right? So I may be non-traditional, but I think the pressure is a little bit different because every interview I do, I say we're going to win because I will 100% believe it, whether it's swimming, soccer, basketball. And I tell our coaches every meeting, we purposely do stuff in our staff meetings to remind people the last time we won conference championships. Because if we don't win and this doesn't work out, I'm going back to my house on the north side. I don't get to go to another state. I don't get to do things. And all my buddies and everybody who I've said we're going to win, they're going to be like, hey, remember that time you said you're going to win?
Yeah.
Right. So, that's the expectation. So we do evaluate coaches every day. I mean, it's not just an in-season thing. It's an out-of-season thing. Just like at day one when Paul started, we started evaluating him, and we were evaluating Coach Bruce and all the other ones, and I think part of the evaluation was, you're right, the Coliseum is a great venue. It's 7,500, 3,000 seats bigger than what we're going to build in our athletic center. It was built really more for hockey. And one of the things when I decided, along with some help, that we were coming back to the Jungle. We will play 3 games at the Coliseum. The first game, Readers and Leaders, right? 5,000 kids. Don't give that up. New Year's Day, and then our last game of the year will be a doubleheader. I said, well, hey, if we're coming back to the Jungle, we got to have courtside seats, right? We got to really make this happen. If we're coming back to the Jungle, we have to update our LEDs. If we're coming back to the Jungle, we have to update, a VIP area and do those different things, because those are what winning programs do. And we may not have the nicest things in the world, but we're going to have the nicest things we can have. And, and I think that we're getting to that point. It's still a lot of things to be done, but, excited for the Casaro era. We've already sold more season tickets this year than we did last year. I joke every time I introduce Paul in a room, somebody in that room is related to him. And, it's been great. And I think it's the nice thing, it's pushed our other coaches, because Paul's out and about talking to people. He's doing camps. And it's made some of our other coaches say, well, gosh, like, it's really working for him. We got to go do this too. And, I think it's been a good start so far.
Yeah. And so Coach Casaro, he comes from University of Indianapolis. I texted him the other day with this IU Indy thing, and I said, I don't know about you, but being back and starting to see all this IU Indy, it's finally starting to not look like U Indy for me, because the branding from U Indy. And him and I were there together for about 4 years. Okay. And so I got to work with Coach Casaro for a long time. I've known him for a long time, and I couldn't put more support around someone. Same time, you had to do a search. And so maybe for those that are doing a basketball search, I know you still met with other people, obviously. Yeah. So maybe just walk through, like, what did that search look like, and maybe the timeline, how many people you spoke to, and who's involved?
Yeah, it's interesting. Doing a college basketball search, first of all, you don't realize how many. I had to call people and say, stop giving out my cell phone number. I've done the better part of my adult career keeping my number out of certain people's hands, and I just don't want a bunch of people texting and calling. And you don't realize how many people know coaches, right? And I think in my situation, I had a lot of people who weren't in athletics, like, well, hey, you should think about this person, that person. And which is kind of funny to me, because it's like, first thing we go do is go check somebody's record. And it's like, all right, well, that's probably not the person. And also, it's the only hire that you'll do that everybody knows who you're going to hire and is successful, right? If you think about it, if you hire somebody in a majority of other jobs and it doesn't work out, 6 months later they leave, people are like, oh, okay, it must not have been a good fit. When you hire a basketball coach, you're with them. You're with them for a little while.
You're tied to them.
The NFL and NBA have kind of changed this. Like, you can fire people on a whim, but we're just not in that position to do it. So it was really important for me to spend a lot of time, with the people and get buy-in. So, we, to your point earlier, I'm not going to say we have a list for every coach, but I have an idea of what the profile looks like. And we spent 18 days to hire Paul. And over the 18 days, we talked to a lot of people, and we kind of had an initial profile that I put together and said, hey, these are the 5 things we want. Former head coach or head coach at some level, winner, CEO mindset, going to turn out great young men. And I can't remember the 5th ones right now. And people kept reminding me, go back to your list. And, our first initial conversation with people, we put them on the clock, 30 minutes. That's all you had. And at the end of 30 minutes, if that 30 minutes didn't convince me to do round 2, how are you ever going to recruit to come play here? Mm-hmm. So we did those, and we did a lot. We probably did more interviews than I probably would moving forward, but I wanted to cast a wide net. And, Paul was early on the list. I met face-to-face with him. I went on the road a couple times and met some folks, which is funny. I'd be in the car doing interviews. People are like, where are you going? I'm like, well, I'm just driving around, right? But I was going to go meet with coaches. Then our second round, probably third round really after the face-to-face, it was a half hour with Laura, Ed, and Chris Johnson, our women's soccer coach. Chris has been here.
It's been a long time.
And I wanted them, their opinion was really important to me, but I also wanted the new coach to have an idea of what barriers or what issues they're going to face here, right? It's a different public institution. You run into different things. I mean, one of the hardest parts of my job has been figuring out how to navigate some of these things. It's new, it's big. And then the second half of that interview would spend time on offense and defense philosophy. And then, several people on campus were able to meet with folks and be involved in the interview process. And we brought a couple different people to campus. And, each time, Paul does have that CEO mindset, commands the room. And I think in today's world, when probably people were hiring coaches 5 years ago, it was talking about how do you recruit high school kids? What's your offense philosophy? And I don't know, maybe who knows what the third one is. Now it's what's your transfer portal philosophy? What are you bringing to NIL? Then you get into high school recruiting. Then you get into offense. Then you get into defense. And I think for us, we want to be a blue collar program where we want to have NIL dollars and collective dollars involved in this, but we also want kids that want to be here and want to fight. We want people like Paul, right? I think we both have intensity. It's probably a little different. I've been to a couple of the practices now, and I love it. He's intense. He's doing the drills with the guys, and I want our guys to respond to that. And the nice part about our league, really competitively. But if you play hard every night, you're going to win some games you shouldn't win. Yeah. And, I think you look at what Green Bay did this year. Obviously, they had some great players, but, wasn't a huge change of what they brought back from 2 years ago. And, this year we have 16 new guys that are going to come in, and some of them have chips on their shoulders who were D2 guys that think they should be D1, and now they're going to have the chance to prove it. And we're going to be able to do it in the jungle. And
they're Indianapolis guys.
And five guys from Indy on the team. I think every one of our players, except for one, is within a 5-hour drive. Yeah. And the one that's not 7 feet tall, right? So you got to make some exceptions to this. Obviously have, I think it's going to be great. You have people that are Indiana All-Stars on both teams, men's and women's this year. I can't tell you the last time that's happened on both teams. And, there's just this intensity around the program. And you talk about that CEO mindset, right? There was I can't remember which football coach said it. He said, my job is to go for two, decide if we go for two and go for punt. It's a little bit different, right? Little different things, but the way just Paul manages the other things from his staff meetings to his team meetings to the minute by minute for practice, like you have to take out a lot of the guessing for these kids. I mean, coaches' jobs are hard. You're trying to get 18 to 22-year-old kids to play hard every night. That's incredibly difficult. And so you got to help them get to a point. And, I think seeing how the guys are responding, a lot of guys never played football, right? You have the guys that came over from IU Indy.
Yeah, a lot of them are incomers.
Yeah, everybody else is new. And it's been really fun to watch. And I'm excited for the season. And I think Paul's learning stuff from our coaches. I think those coaches are learning stuff from Paul. And, I'm excited. I can't wait for November. I think November 4th is our first game. You can take me out of politics. We can't take the politics out of me. It's the Monday before Election Day. Yeah. Right. So that's how I remember it. But I'm super excited for what we have coming up.
Well, to wrap it up, we've talked about the IU Indianapolis launch. We talked about your vision for a little bit. That's two things I was going to end on. But to summarize it, I mean, what is this launch, IU Indianapolis? What is still to be done? Like, not everything can be done right away. Like we were talking about, branding and things like that. And you'll find logos. I think I had an AD on from maybe UNC Charlotte, and I think he was talking about the rebrand. It's like you see your logo, you realize how often you see your old logo. So there's going to be things that pop up, and then at Akron they just painted over stuff, and and that's how they got rid of it. So there's going to be some things, but I mean throughout this upcoming academic year, you're officially IU Indianapolis. There's a huge buzz on campus about it. I mean, what is still to be done that year? I mean, is everything going to be ready to go July 1, or are we going to be expecting some changes at all?
Yeah, I think the majority of stuff will be ready July 1. I think the stuff in our hands will be changed, right? Unfortunately, we can't change the Facebook name yet. They got to wait for that. And some of the website stuff.
But like uniforms and stuff?
Yeah, uniforms, you'll see a lot of IU Indy. I'm going to use your podcast to spread the news. We're not IUI. We're IU Indy or IU Indianapolis. Yep. So the uniforms will reflect IU Indy, Jaguars, things of that nature. We'll really lean into the skyline, different things like that. yeah, I think the majority of stuff we can have are going to be done. Our social media that we can change has already changed, Twitter or X and Instagram. There'll be things here and there that will come across. One of the things that we're learning is, we had all the rankings for the former name. Now we got to get that material, get it to our future student athletes. And I think the thing that you'll see that'll be really different, we want to be a part of this institution from in academics, in enrollment, and from everything else. So we want our athletes to be more involved. We're working with PJ Wilson and his team on how do we welcome new students to games, right? If you've committed to come here, what special thing can we do for you at home games to get you start coming to games now? And, I think there'll be some minor things here and there that, be out of control, but I think for the most part, the IU Indy, IU Indianapolis stuff is good to go. And, we're excited for the new name. And I told people this, and I don't think this is a bad thing at all, but I've lived here my entire life. I couldn't explain IUPUI. I can explain IU and I can explain Indianapolis. And I'm really excited for our coaches to be able to take that message, to future student athletes. And I think one of the hard things will be the people that have been here a long time just start saying IU Indy instead of what the previous said. But, it's a great transition. It's a great time. It's a great buzz. And, we're excited for what the Jaguars have to offer. And we're excited to get the season started and feel pretty confident about how good we're going to be in our sports this year.
All right. Luke Bosso,
Charles,
IU
thanks.
Indianapolis Athletic Director. Thanks for being on Higher Ed Athletics.
Appreciate it.